The Romans were masters of architecture, politics, and war. They gave us aqueducts, paved roads, concrete, and even the idea of the Senate. But when it came to food, their choices might surprise you. Roman cuisine was as extravagant as their empire, and while some dishes might sound delicious today, others are almost unthinkable. From rotting fish sauce poured over every meal to stuffed rodents and brains served as delicacies, the Romans weren't shy about what they put on the table. So buckle up as we count down the top 10 foods the ancient Romans ate that just might disgust you. Number 10, garum, fermented fish sauce. We start with the undisputed king of Roman condiments, garum. This wasn't just a sauce, it was an obsession. Garum was made by throwing fish guts, blood and bones into a vat of salt, leaving them out under the hot Mediterranean sun, and waiting until they liquefied into a foul-smelling paste. The result? A salty, pungent liquid that Romans poured on almost everything. Garum factories lined the coasts of Spain, North Africa, and southern Italy, and the smell was so overwhelming that they were usually built far away from cities. Yet despite the stench, Romans couldn't get enough of it. Rich or poor, soldier or senator, everyone ate garum. There were even gourmet versions sold at high prices, flavored with wine or herbs. Think of it as Roman ketchup. Only this ketchup was made from anchovy intestines that had been stewing in the sun for months. Number 9, flamingo tongue. If you thought rare steaks were a flex, the Romans went much further. Among the elite, one of the most prized delicacies was flamingo tongue. Yes, you heard that right, the tongue of a flamingo. Why? Because it was rare, exotic, and expensive. Wealthy Romans were obsessed with serving dishes that proved their power and reach across the empire. Flamingos were brought from North Africa, and eating their tongues became a symbol of wealth. It wasn't about taste, it was about status. Ancient writers even mocked the rich for wasting fortunes on such bizarre foods. But in Roman society, nothing said, "I've made it," like serving a platter of bright pink flamingo tongues to your dinner guests. Number 8, dormice, stuffed rodents. Here's where things get even stranger. Romans loved eating dormice, small rodents that looked like squirrels. But these weren't just any mice. They were a delicacy served to the wealthy, often at banquets. Romans kept dormice in special clay jars called gladiators, where the animals were fattened with nuts and seeds. Once plump, they were stuffed with minced pork, nuts and honey, then roasted. It was considered so extravagant that the Roman Senate at one point debated banning dormice as a luxury. But of course, the wealthy ignored the law and kept serving them anyway. Imagine sitting at a feast, and the appetizer is a roasted mouse stuffed with honey. That was Rome at its finest. Number 7, jellyfish and sea urchins. Romans had adventurous palates when it came to seafood. Beyond fish and oysters, they also enjoyed jellyfish and sea urchins. Jellyfish would be sliced thin, boiled, and served with vinegar or sauces. Sea urchins were cracked open and eaten raw or baked into stews. To Roman diners, unusual textures and flavors were exciting, not off-putting. To us, jellyfish might sound like something that belongs in an aquarium, not a dinner plate. But to Romans, it was just another example of their desire to turn the natural world into a culinary adventure. Number 6, sow's womb. Roman cooks wasted nothing, and pigs were especially prized. One of the strangest dishes that shows up in Apicius's famous Roman cookbook is sow's womb. Yes, the uterus of a pig. It was boiled or roasted with herbs and spices and served as a delicacy at banquets. To the Romans, it wasn't strange. It was simply another part of the animal. In fact, dishes like this reflected the Roman belief that using every part of an animal showed respect for it. Still, the idea of eating pig womb today might make even the most adventurous foodie pause. Number 5, ostrich. When Romans wanted to put on a feast that truly impressed, they went big, literally. Ostriches were imported from Africa, roasted whole and carved in front of guests. Ostrich wasn't just food, it was a spectacle. Serving it showed that you had the wealth and connections to import animals from the farthest reaches of the empire. Apicius even included a recipe for ostrich stew, seasoned with pepper, mint, cumin, and dates. It was less about taste and more about bragging rights. The bigger the bird, the bigger the brag. Number 4, garum ice cream. Remember garum from earlier? The Romans didn't just use it on savory foods, they even experimented with desserts. There are references to dishes where garum was mixed with honey, fruit, and spices to create strange, sweet and savory combinations. Imagine a hot Roman summer's day. Instead of grabbing a scoop of vanilla, you might be handed a chilled dessert flavored with fermented fish guts. The Romans were bold experimenters, and they weren't afraid to mix flavors that we'd never dream of combining today. Number 3, peacock brains and tongues. Roman banquets were about spectacle, and nothing embodied that more than peacock. The bird was roasted whole, then presented with its feathers carefully reattached for display. But the true delicacies were its tongues and brains. These parts were considered luxurious and were often reserved for the highest status guests. The more extravagant the dish, the greater the host's reputation. For the Romans, food wasn't just sustenance, it was theater, a performance of wealth and power, and serving peacock brains was the ultimate showpiece. Number 2, snails fattened in milk. Long before the French made escargot famous, the Romans were already enjoying snails, but they took it a step further. They would fatten snails by feeding them milk and wine, making them plump and rich. Once ready, the snails were cooked with herbs and served as a delicacy. Writers of the time describe snail farms, where rows of amphora jars were used to raise these slimy treats. Creamy, boozy snails might not be everyone's idea of dinner, but for the Romans, it was a mark of refinement. Number 1, garum, again. Yes, garum takes the top spot because it wasn't just a food, it was the backbone of Roman cuisine. No meal was complete without it. It flavored bread, vegetables, meats, and even sweets. Its trade made fortunes, and jars of garum were shipped across the empire. Pliny the Elder even described different brands of garum, with the finest varieties reserved for the wealthy. The empire literally smelled of garum. It defined Roman cooking the way olive oil defines Mediterranean cuisine today. Love it or hate it, garum was Rome's signature flavor. So after hearing this list, which of these Roman foods would you dare to try? Would you be brave enough to taste stuffed dormice, creamy snails, or even a scoop of garum-flavored dessert? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through Rome's strangest foods, make sure to subscribe to Civilization Deep Dives, because the deeper we go into history, the more bizarre and fascinating it becomes.